Welcome back. So where did we leave the end of part three? We're waiting for the mould to dry before we laid in the carbon fibre. So that's what we're going to do in this video. I'll start this video by just walking through how to mix up the epoxy, and then we'll go through the carbon fibre process and hopefully end the video either with taking it out of the mould or cutting the resulting carbon. So yeah, sit back, buckle in and enjoy the video. Okay, so let's mix up some epoxy. So for this we will need some epoxy resin, EL2. It says here what hardener to use and what ratio to mix it with. And the hardener is here. So here I've got the slow acting hardener, so it gives me a bit more time to work with. So to mix it, pretty straightforward. I'm going to mix in go with about 100 grams. Or 101 grams of the epoxy, and that means I need 30 grams of the hardener. So we'll mix that in as well. And it's just a case of mixing it together. I think with this the idea is not to mix air into it, so it's not to beat it like you would an egg, it's just mix it together to make sure that the two parts are combined. And it will go, I think that one of the components is clear, the other one's got a tinge to it. When mixed together they go pretty clear. And then the thing they do is they then, to make sure that you've got all the bits around the edges and it's all well and truly combined, you basically transfer from one pot to another. Like that. And that at least makes sure that it's all mixed and combined. You haven't got any pockets that aren't mixed up very well. So that's our epoxy. Easy. Okay, so this is it, the moment we've all been waiting for. So I've got my epoxy mixed up. I've got my mould, which I put epoxy on earlier, and this is left to go off tacky. So I'm now going to put another coat of epoxy into the mould, and this will allow the carbon fibre, give it something to bond to and wet against. Okay, so I'm happy that that's the mould, the pattern well covered now in epoxy. So now it's time to bring on some carbon fibre. So here we have some carbon fibre. Now this is a 2x2 twill carbon fibre. It's about £12 a square metre. I got the cheaper stuff that's called the black stuff. And this is a weave of strands of carbon. And it's just the same as cloth, it's flexible in cloth. What we're going to do is to bond it together with the epoxy, and that when the epoxy dries it should make quite a stiff, rigid structure. Okay, so we lay the first one in. And then using the brush, use a brush. We're not painting more carbon fibre, more epoxy on. What I'm trying to do is to work from the inside out and wick through or wet through the epoxy that I've laid down below it through the surface of the carbon fibre, and this way it will impregnate all the way through the strands of carbon and give a good substrate for everything to bond to. Right, okay, so that's the first sheet wetted through, and this will be the side that you actually see. So now I'm going to paint on some more epoxy. Again, working from the inside out, and the idea is to get epoxy all the way through the layer of carbon. Really wet it through. So this next layer I'm going to put in orthogonally, so at 90 degrees to the first weave, and this should add some strength. Again, I'm going to apply a little bit, and I'm going to try and wet through as much as I can. And this wetting through process makes the carbon as much carbon and as little resin as you can get, thereby making the structure depend more on the carbon properties rather than the resin properties. So again, I work from the inside out. And again, the other half of the sheet. And then when that's applied and wetted, I'm going to paint another epoxy layer on the whole thing. It's just basically repeat this process for as many layers as you care to do. Okay, and then finally the last layer. This will be the inside layer. Right, that is it. So now all we have to do is wait for the glue to dry, or the epoxy to dry. I'll trim off the edges. I'll do that now. Okay, so I'll trim off the edges now, any excess. there we go. So we leave that to dry now for about 24 hours, and then we should be ready to demould it and see how it's turned out. So fingers crossed. Okay, so here we are with. All right, all right, all right. It's okay. There we go. No. All right, settle, settle. I know. Settle. Settle. Good boy. Ready? You ready to look at the camera? Look at the camera. Okay. Right. So here we are. About 36 hours later, actually, and we're ready to take the OT. I'm not paying you attention. Is that what it is? I'm not paying you attention. There, good boy. Stay. The carbon fibre and the resin should have fully cured by now. It's been sitting at room temperature for that length of time. And now's the moment of truth to remove it from the mould. So we're both excited about this. So I'm going to go around and try and prise it out of the mould. There we go. Come on. Very good. Right, let's see what this looks like. Okay, so we've got a pretty good fill. There's a few small areas where the resin hasn't quite gone, but that's okay, that's kind of normal. It's nice and smooth, and you can see the carbon fibre weave nicely through the outside. That's not a bad result. I don't know how closely we can look and see this. This is straight out of the mould, so some of this will have some sort of wax residue. I can clean this up a little bit. But that's pretty good. And there's the dish. And how stiff is it? It's pretty good. It's got some flex in it. If you compare that to the one it's replacing, you can kind of see it's kind of a bit chalk and cheese. Yeah, we like that Otis, eh? Okay, so I'll clean it up now. I might put a top coat on here just to make it a bit shinier. So that looks pretty good.